Week 10 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few plays I look to sell and trade this week. The first guy's C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans. So what a rookie year it's been for Stroud, no doubt about it. Only one interception on the season, and now coming off a monster ball game and one of the best games we've seen in a while in fantasy football, where he had 470 pass yards, 5 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. So C.J. Stroud, he's in sync with his wide receivers and tight end Dalton Schultz. What a shootout it was between the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Houston Texans. But C.J. Stroud, for the most part this season, he was maxing out at 25 fantasy points. So to get a 51-point fantasy day in the fantasy leagues here for C.J. Stroud, I don't think, obviously, it's going to happen once again. He's got a tougher matchup in Week 10 at Cincinnati. And we know besides the top 6-7 quarterbacks, it's been a weak position for the most part this season. So right now, after coming off the monster ball game for C.J. Stroud, and me believing in Week 10 and on, he's going to come back down to earth a little bit. This is a perfect time to sell him high. I'm not saying to trade him just for anything, but after a guy comes off a monster performance, like I mentioned, what we saw from C.J. Stroud, he's a sell high candidate, in my opinion. And if you could get a solid running back or a wide receiver in a deal for a quarterback, because you could always stream quarterbacks on the wire if you really wanted to and have strength at other positions. So right now, while Stroud's coming off the monster game, he's a perfect sell high this week. The next guy's Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's pretty much been a boom or bust wide receiver once again, is Devonta Smith. I know last season he had a lot of boom games for the most part, but we've seen it this year. A lot of games, 7, 8 fantasy points, and then some weeks he'll have 20-plus fantasy points. So the last 2 games for Smith, Week 8 at the Commanders, 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. Then in Week 9 versus Dallas, if it wasn't for that one deep ball that was over 30 yards, only 3 catches, 51 yards, and a touchdown. So right now, the last 2 games he's played well as Devonta Smith. But like I said, he's been a deep ball threat or nothing. Now going into the bye week here is Philadelphia. And then a couple tougher matchups at Kansas City, Buffalo, and San Francisco the next 3 weeks after the bye week. So right now, after he's got those 2 games under his belt, and fantasy owners can't use him, obviously, with the bye week here in Week 10 and tougher matchups, this is a perfect time to sell Devonta Smith high this week. I know he's been playing solid the last few weeks here, but I don't think it's going to keep up. I know Dallas Goedert most likely out for the majority of the rest of the season with the broken forearm, but I still think Smith is second, third fiddle in this offense, where obviously it's Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. Then you got the running back Swift, Gainwell over there, and then Smith is the third or fourth option. So right now, he's a sell-high candidate this week, and you definitely could get great value for him. The next play is Jacoby Myers of the Vegas Raiders. I've mentioned Myers over the last few weeks as a sell-high candidate, and now with Aiden O'Donnell, the starting quarterback, most likely the remainder of the season, we're going to see the numbers drop off for Myers. And Myers, he's been a touchdown-dependent wide receiver anyway this season. So the last few games here for him, Week 7 at the Bears, 7 catches, 50 yards, a touchdown. Week 8 at the Lions, a catch, 19 yards. And Week 9 versus the Giants defense, 2 catches, 38 yards, and a rushing touchdown with 17 rush yards. So right now, obviously, if that didn't happen in that game, you weren't going to see much out of Myers. And now with a tough matchup versus the New York Jets that give up the least amount of fantasy points to wide receivers on the season, I don't see Myers doing much in that game. And then Week 11 at Miami, it's a game where it's going to be tougher, obviously, with a good secondary and Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard back there. So the next 2 weeks, it's going to be tough to use Jacoby Myers. And like I said, with a rookie quarterback in there who's not really a highly touted rookie like a C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or even a Will Levis coming into the season and Anthony Richardson, I don't think Myers is going to be consistent week in and week out. So after a decent game for him, I look to sell him this week. The next play is Gus Edwards of the Baltimore Ravens. So Gus Edwards, the last 3 weeks, he's played great football for this Baltimore Raven team and getting an opportunity. But now with Keaton Mitchell coming out of nowhere, after he's been working his way back over the last few months to get in shape and get going, this guy Mitchell is definitely getting work, I believe. He's got breakaway speed, and he could add another element to this offense. So Gus Edwards, a touchdown-dependent running back as well. He's definitely putting up numbers and still going to get short yardage, even if Mitchell eats into the workload. But still, I think we're going to see some pedestrian 9-10-point games coming up here for Edwards. Week 7 versus Detroit, 14 carries, 64 yards, a touchdown, a catch, 80 yards, which obviously is fluky. Week 8 at Arizona, 19 carries, 80 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 catches, 14 yards, 3 touchdowns. You're not going to see every week from him. And then even here, Week 9, only 5 carries, 52 yards. And the 2 goal line stoppers for Gus Edwards. So like I said, the workload wasn't there really. I know it was a blowout victory, 37-3. And a game here in Week 10 versus Cleveland that's got a good run defense. And it's going to be a grinded out type of division game. I think Edwards obviously will get more of a workload. But like I said, Keaton Mitchell adds an element of speed to this offense. Obviously going into the season, J.K. Dobbins was going to be the running back, and then getting hurt week 1 with the torn Achilles. But anyway, with Mitchell in the mix and Gus Edwards' workload, pretty much anywhere from 7 to 15 carries. I think on that limited work, the numbers are going to drop. So right now, while he's playing great football the last 3 weeks, no doubt about it, he's a sell-high candidate this week. Next play is Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. So Amari Cooper, it's been an up-and-down type of year for Cooper, but the last 2 weeks, he's turned things around now. And Watson's back in the lineup. Week 8 at Seattle, 6 catches, 89 yards. And then Week 9 versus Arizona, 5 catches, 139 yards, and a touchdown. But Week 10, it's a type of game for Cooper where I worry he could disappear in this one, and he could only get 7 to 8 fantasy points. But we've seen that a lot in his career on the road, especially in his Vegas Raider days. Then Dallas Cowboy days, we saw it a lot with him over there as well. And even this season, I know the quarterback play hasn't been good for the most part, with P.J. Walker starting games and Watson in and out of the lineup being inconsistent. But like I said, Amari Cooper, I don't think he's a wide receiver you could count in and week out where people drafted him, obviously. He still could go out there and make plays, Cooper, and put up numbers. But week to week, I don't think it's going to be as consistent. Good running back in a deal for Cooper. I'll make the deal. I'm not saying just trade him for anything. You can make a deal and get a good running back, wide receiver with more consistency. This would be the time to do it. Next sells Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. So Saquon Barkley, he's been up and down this season. Injuries have played a concern. And now this Giant team, they're down to their third, fourth string quarterback. It's either going to be DeVito or Matt Barkley most likely for this Giant team, unless they bring in a veteran, even though he won't be up to snuff with the playbook. But anyway, Week 7 versus Washington, he had 77 yards on 21 carries, 3 catches, 41 yards, a touchdown, a fumble loss. Week 8 versus the Jets, 36 carries, and that one a crazy workload, 128 rush yards and 3 catches, no yards. And Week 9 at Vegas, 16 carries, 90 yards, 3 catches, 23 yards. So a tough matchup here at the Dallas Cowboys coming up for Saquon Barkley. I know he's had a good career versus the Cowboys, but right now, you know, defenses and the Cowboys, they're going to zero in on Barkley, and whoever the quarterback's going to be, DeVito or Matt Barkley for this Giant team, try to beat him, and that's going to be a recipe for disaster. So I know Barkley could catch the ball out of the backfield. I know he could go out there and make some plays as Saquon, but right now, with teams focusing in on Barkley and this offensive line being weak and no quarterback that's really a threat, I don't really see him doing much for the remainder of the season. And also as well, he's been injury prone and he's on that 1-year deal. So we could see Barkley try to mail one in as well, where he don't want to get injured and cost himself a contract next season. So right now with all those factors, I think I would sell Barkley high this week. I know player I look to sell in trades, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott early in the season couldn't get anything going, but the last 3 weeks he's definitely gone out there and played great football for the Cowboys and fantasy owners. Week 6 at the Chargers, 272 pass yards, a touchdown, 40 rush yards, and a rushing touchdown. Week 8 versus the Rams, 304 pass yards, 4 touchdowns, an INT, 19 rushing. And then another monster 300-yard performance at Philly in Week 9, 374 pass yards and 3 touchdowns. So right now, Prescott, no doubt about it, has played great football. He played good enough for the Cowboys to win that game in Week 9, but they're just going to finish it off in that last drive. So right now, he's got a great matchup versus the Giants. And obviously, they're depleted. Their offense puts their defense in bad positions or field position and turnovers. So I think Prescott, after this week, will have 1 or 2 more good games. And then the quarterback to not really doing much with a tougher schedule coming up from Week 13 on. So right now, Dak Prescott, he's got great weapons. Him and CeeDee Lamb have been on a tear over the last few weeks. Jake Ferguson emerging as a top 10 tight end in fantasy football as well. And him and Cooks, besides this week, will get things going. So right now, things are looking good for Prescott, but he's just a guy where you wait for the other shoe to drop, where you count on him the most, and where he only puts in a decent performance. They're coming off of 3 great games in a row for Dak. He's a perfect sell high this week, so that's a few plays I look to sell and trade here in Week 10 of the fantasy football season.